Thank you for taking the time to do this, man.
Oh, Itay, I mean, I feel the same way. There's like a kindred spirit sort ofness about this, where it's like, you're living your life there, I'm living my life here, but we've kind of come to similar paths and
Hmm.
different, and on many different levels. There's a lot of overlap. So, and just from the very beginning, everyone who I've met with you guys has just been, yeah. It feels like we would all hang out in college or something.
My first question, I would really love an introduction to you because you have such a diverse and interesting uh, corpus of creation and background stories. So you learned industrial design, right? You set your hair on fire, and you've done some visual for Beyonce's tour, which is amazing.
Yeah, so back in college, I was originally majoring in industrial design, and this was in the early 90s. At the time, I'm not sure if you recall, but Michael Jackson had a video called Black or White that came out, and then there was Terminator
I think
2
that
had
was
come out, and
my first VFX inspiration. I remember coming to school with a
yeah.
VHS of this video, showing it to the class and talking about it. I mean, that was my first. I was amazed.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I I just couldn't believe it was possible to communicate visually that way. And also the message that he had in the music video is very important as well. And the way that people were kind of like what he was communicating uh, was so amplified by the technique. And so I saw that, and I saw Terminator 2 also blew me away as far as just the possibility for the visual effects. And I think it was my senior year when I came across a program called Morph. And
Mhm.
I was an industrial design major, and I switched my major overnight to digital image making, and then I just wanted to morph things. I just I wanted to morph animals and humans into animals, and I did like videos for environmental organizations and things like that that I thought would benefit from that communication of idea. And let's see, so I had switched my majors, and just taking a step backwards, up until I was about 19, I had never really opened up Photoshop. That's when I first was introduced to it. Before then, my medium of choice was colored pencil, but my
Ah,
the content of what I would draw was heavily inspired by Salvador Dali and surrealism, and so it would require, if there was like a face, it wouldn't just be like a portrait, but maybe it'd be kind of like distorting into something else, and then it's all blending together, and lots of what I have come since to know as like compositing, essentially all these different vignettes. And so when I first opened up Photoshop, it was like, wow, I can just focus on, I can just take, a blur tool, or I can take a distort tool. I don't have to kind of, and sometimes do like the math, to kind of figure out how how this thing would kind of correctly distort this way. If I was going to do like a distorted picture of my sister, for example, now it's a Snapchat filter where you make them, look funny. But back then I would, draw a grid, and then I would try to make her look funny. So a lot of it, when Photoshop came out, it was like, all right, now I can communicate some of these ideas a lot more quickly and effortlessly, and just focus more on the concept. So if I was going, so I didn't have to, spend as many sleepless nights, just with my colored pencils. And it was a beautiful process as well. I mean, it's very meditative in a sense, but you don't always want to do that. Sometimes you just want to communicate an idea. I didn't live too close to my daughter for the first few years of her life, so I would create artwork for her, and I would use Photoshop basically in After Effects to create these pieces. And kind of having those personal projects really was incredible for my career, because I'm not limited by anything that the client is suggesting. It's like there's not really a timeline. She's a year old. She's not going to even know if it's a day late for her birthday. However, I would say that um, another nice thing about the personal projects in general is that you got to figure it out. Like for example, sometimes there might be, if it was her birthday, it's like your computer crashes. It's like, oh man, this was my gift. I got to keep figuring out. But what I found was that it was like a mutually beneficial relationship between my personal artwork and my career, because I would then started having access to really amazing tools as I became a visual artist, in the tool, and I was a flame artist, and After Effects and everything. And so the videos and the artwork for my daughter in particular at the time became more elaborate. And again, I think that it was just a big source of like fuel for the engine for developing my career.
Your personal projects had an audience, and that's what brought you commercial projects, or am I right about that?
No, actually, it's not so much that they brought me any commercial projects. Nowadays, I think that it it helps, because I think when people look at my website and they see something like Rebirth of Gaia, they say, okay, this guy's insane. Like, he doesn't cut corners.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's a craft to it. So this is what he does for fun on the weekends. Like there.
Uh-huh.
So I think it has, in the long run, it's been beneficial. But at least initially, I mean, it was intended, Rebirth of Gaia was just intended to hang on my daughter's wall. It wasn't really to be shared with anybody outside the house until, some friends had said, you should, try to share this more.
Rebirth of Gaia begins with its inception. Inception flows into the umbilical cord of the nebulaic embryo, representing the birth of the universe. Pulling back, we find that this embryo is embedded in the mind of chaos, the vacant and infinite void from which the world, the gods, and men arose. The human mind is a prism whose shards of light stylize pure divinity into different mythologies. When chaos blows the cosmic dandelion, Gaia bursts into existence.
I mean, that's how I learned to flame, was doing a project for my daughter for a Christmas present for her. And it's funny because I got hired soon thereafter as a flame artist, and I had never done any blue screen or green screen compositing, and I'd only done my my projects for my daughter. And so
Yes, Flame Warper, especially, I mean, took years to be UI friendly in any way. I mean, it's still really hardcore, I think, but
yeah,
it's
and I
it's
don't
an
know if
amazing tool.
I'm not sure if I ever saw the user friendly version before I stopped using Flame, but yeah, it always seemed pretty difficult for me. I mean, the thing I would say too, and this kind of dovetails perhaps into the overall theme of my career and everything, is that I'm not an extremely technical person, and
Uh-huh.
in a sense that means I have a little bit of an inability to know what the tools are not to know what the tools are supposed to be, what the limitations are. And so, anyways, that project kind of evolved to, in the case of not knowing what I wasn't supposed to be doing with the tools, it was an After Effects comp that was 30K by 10K as far as the pixels, and I was using
Uh-huh.
my 2007 laptop. And 30K nowadays is really big, but in 2007 on a laptop, it was extraordinarily big. But again, I didn't really know what the limitation. I just look. I think
Sounds
I just
unreasonable, totally unreasonable. Yeah.
And I think it's also, it can be helpful as far as describing the process. Sometimes when I see making a video, you see, this was the final layer, this was the final, element here. But it's helpful. I think that it can be helpful to see all the different paths, because in a sense, that's just as important as as where the final where you arrive is kind of like the journey. I guess there's a there's a quote there, like but yeah, I mean, like the path to get to the destination is quite interesting as well, and it can be quite informative, I think, too. So yeah, and it's fun for me to watch it play back.
I think that's a part of what I find so beautiful and so tempting in using node-based design systems. I mean, node-based type of work at general. being able to trace your steps back to the point where it got wrong. This is one of the applications of node-based. I mean, you're building something, going through the entire process. Everything you are doing keeps, is getting recorded in this type of work. And then you can go back a few steps, fix something, and maybe even start building a new path from there. This is, I think, one of the pleasures in working node-based. How do you,
Yeah.
do you feel the
I,
same?
I
Yeah.
think that with AI in particular, it becomes more helpful to have node based, and the reason why is what you were describing. One of the reasons is just being able to see the thought process more clearly delineated. Because you can read the creative path right in front of you, almost like if you had like the time lapse to kind of go back and see where how you arrive someplace. And with AI, I think it's really helpful to have what was the prompt, how did that feed into the which image did I end up choosing, and how did that feed into the next prompt, and to create the video if you had like a simple prompt still video kind of setup. Because prior to that sort of node-based way of working, it required a lot of organizational manpower just to kind of keep track of spreadsheets of what the prompt was, and then organizing the content. I mean, because AI kind of flips the script on all of that. It becomes a lot less about creating beautiful frames and instead curating beautiful frames, because you can get too many frames. I mean, you really need to, you can just keep hitting iterate, and now it's so fast. You can have, a couple hundred frames within a few minutes, then it doesn't help you either. That becomes unproductive if you don't have a way of kind of curating it. And so I think that the node-based with AI is particularly helpful. One, to kind of track the creative path, but then two, to help curate, to kind of keep things in organized. That otherwise, if you had them outside of that in a different forum, then you need to kind of invest a lot of time just in the curation of it. But this allows you to kind of, in the case of Weavy, select which of the iterations was the one that you're going to go with, but you still have all the other ones organized right there. And I think that for me, on a personal level, the node base is helpful to kind of show the process, the creative process, but it becomes more, at least the way I see it unfolding, more indispensable if you're working with a team. Because if you're sharing it, it's hard enough to remember for yourself, like how you got someplace. But if you, want to be productive with a team, you really need to share the whole workflow, the whole process.
So you mentioned Morpher and Photoshop as wow moments in the beginning of your career. So I was wondering if you remember any wow moment like that working with AI.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been so many, and the frequency with which I have a wow moment with AI is, I think, my brain can't handle it anymore. It's like, oh my gosh, every week is like, this is insane. But going back to the beginning, I think one of the first things that was a wow moment was, when Midjourney came out, and I think a lot of us were kind of playing with it. It was one of the first ones. And I wanted to see how it would interpret my own artwork. And so I took Rebirth of Gaia into it, and wanted to kind of see if AI could be a creative partner to expand upon some of those ideas, and to see how it would visualize it, and also to try to push it to see what its limitations were. It can create something in about a minute that took me 15 years to create as far as a vignette, but then like they're kind of random. I mean, visually, it was very interesting.
Jesse, when I'm enjoying AI, I think these are the places that actually bring me most satisfaction. I mean, when I know how much work was invested in, generating the right light on your subject to match the background, for example, and getting the shadows right, getting the light right on the subject to match the background image. that work could take hours, if not days, even in hard cases.
Yeah,
And now AI, I mean, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse, but I can do it. I mean, I'm compositing really roughly, then going through image to image or a control net or something like that, and generating the image with an amazing comp. And I'm relieved for the hours that was saved. But
yeah,
I'm also a bit. I miss a bit of the manual work that was
yeah.
needed to do that.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, there is like a meditative quality to cutting out an animal, one at a
Also,
time.
we had so much education invested in it. I mean, we've learned light direction and how it falls on different textures in different proportions. I mean, it's a lot of information that we've learned, and now is getting to be um, not useful anymore, right? So it's
Yeah,
a bit
yeah.
of
I mean,
you need to part from something.
yeah, it is. I know exactly what you're saying. And to kind of give a time frame for how long some of those vignettes took within Rebirth of Gaia, there's one vignette that was my daughter as a waterfall, and just that alone took 4 months every day working on it. So it wasn't days or a week; it was 4 months because and I would have days that were kind of left brain, days that were right brain. So I'd create these elements. I would cut out each animal, each down to each hair, but I would do it for several animals that wouldn't even end up in the final comp, just because I wanted to have the ability to have the assets kind of freely when I was working in the comp. But yeah, nowadays, especially with AI, it removes a lot of that. And you know, I think having the background too makes me more patient when things are not working on with
Yeah.
AI, because or if I have to revert to traditional VFX, AI just seems like a massive, powerful cherry on top for what, as a visual effects artist, we already had like a foundation of being able to create imagery. Now we have like an insane amount of kind of amplified power. So yeah, with the amount of time that it takes, it's truncated to where, again, kind of like the transition from analog to digital with Photoshop, now with going into AI. There's so many parallels to how I feel about how the process is less um I don't know if I'd say less important, but you can focus on different parts of the process too. I mean, you can still, if you care about the craft, it still will take a lot of time, but maybe you don't need to cut out each hair of the animal. Maybe it can be
Hmm.
focused on other ways of, there's ways to kind of keep pushing the comp, or ways to kind of keep layering other concepts into what you're trying to express.
So what do you think VFX artists should double down on? I mean, what skills are more important now with these new tools, and what skills maybe we can let go of or part from?
That's a good question. I think just speaking to what has worked for me is, one, recognize early on that it's impossible to keep up. It's every
Uh-huh.
week is changing, and this week this is Sora kills everything. Oh, VO3 killed Sora. The next week this killed VO3. It's like you can't keep up with it.
VO3 killed VO2. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I would say, in general, any one of these tools is better than anything we had access to up until a year or two ago. And so I would not be overly focused on trying to follow how it changes every week, because there's enough out there at this point. There's enough tools that are insane. But instead, maybe focus on how they can be integrated into your workflow, because it's not as if you have a visual effects project and you have an AI project. It's not black or white. It's extremely, now it's becoming much more intermeshed. And all throughout the process, if you have any creative sort of task, you can break it down into its constituent parts and kind of see which ones might work for AI. Maybe in this project, it's just to help out with the roto, right? Maybe in this
Mhm.
project, it's just the back plate, a super high res still. But you start integrating it here and there, and not kind of think of it jumping from VFX to AI, but just thinking of it more of as like ingredients in your recipe that you can where you can kind of integrate it. And then Um, on the other end of the spectrum, what I've found helpful too is to try to prompt, and you try to do it all in AI and just get it out, the first time, but just to kind of keep testing to see how far it's going. But for a lot of the projects that I'm doing, the client might have a request, or for a professional project, it might be the camera's going down the hallway, and the door opens up, but then also there's something happening on the walls, etc. And what I find in those circumstances is it's not always easy to prompt everything within that, in one go, but you can, okay, let me break it down. Maybe have, a camera going down the hallway, right? And then I'll try to have the door open, but sometimes the door opens the wrong way. And, so you have to kind of like, all right, so at least I have a cool element to start with, and I can use, some traditional things, at least for this week. I mean, because I know that a week from now, the prompt might work. So you have to kind of keep like prodding it to see, as it's changing. The way I use AI is two different ways that I kind of separate it into, like an objective one where I have a very clear idea where I need help with, or with a specific attribute of what I'm trying to do VFX. And even that can be extremely difficult because you can be very clear with your prompt, keep the camera static, do not move the camera, and then it starts moving the camera, like stop moving the camera. So even like the ones that are objective and you have a very clear vision for what it needs to be, there's a difficulty in that, just because you want to rotoscope something quickly, it doesn't mean it's going to come out right way. Maybe you can only use part of it. But the other part of it is more subjective, where you can kind of lean into what AI can bring to the table and let it kind of loosen the leash a little bit and let it run with it. And in those scenarios, for me, it's more about using the ingredients that would be most likely to create happy accidents, not really being too not predetermining the result too much, but having like some loose parameters and mixing disparate elements. Some of them could be like the next wow moment I'll mention is just doing some sports graphics and starting with like a vector kind of lower third, or a school logo. And then that could be one ingredient. And then you take, a really high-tech, cool, futuristic texture, put those together, and then let AI do its thing. And so that it still has, like, there's some vague constraints. I want it to be a lower third. I want it to be futuristic looking, but it's also like, I'm open to what you can bring to the table here. And then like just sitting back and being amazed at like, at this point, there's been so many incredible gains in our ability visually with these different models, whether it's resolution, whether it's being able to use AI to help with some of just the overall creative direction and design, or there's lots of different ways that you can now manipulate footage, etc. But one of the latest wow moment for me, and again, while we're on this call, has been Weavy. And Weavy allows you to kind of orchestrate this symphony of visuals, because now you can think of these individual AI models as these nodes. It's obviously node based, and you can kind of create a system that allows you to create something, output something beautiful using all the different tools. So the way I see a system like Weavy, specifically for visual effects artists, I would kind of think of Weavy as like, nowadays you might have someone who's an After Effects artist, a flame artist, a nuke artist. I think in the very short term, it's, are you, Weavy, or is it ComfyUI, or is it this? There's different ways you could go. And so I kind of see Weavy as as an incredible foundation, almost like you would think of After Effects or Flame. And I see the models as plugins. And so having that foundation means you don't need to relearn, okay, where's the assets folder, because a lot of times I've got all the different tabs open for, all the different ones that are out there. And, but then, each one is like, okay, how do I download today's, and this one, you have to select them all. This one, it's like, but just having one place. And so Weavy for me is, it became, obvious to me from the very beginning that this is a way to kind of keep things organized. It's a way to kind of show visually for me to remember what the process was. what the pipeline was from from the beginning to the end. But when it comes to working with a team, it seems indispensable. I think that's one of the things that's limited these tools from being used. They're so powerful, but it's been very hard for teams to kind of build on them because you have to have, it's a completely different system of managing all your assets. And, we're all trying to stay up to date with how to create your, the structure for a project now that AI is involved instead of traditional. So I think for me, like the latest wow moment, like I said, has been Weavy, and how it is very clear to me that now I can start, I can make a setup, I can share it with somebody else, they can add to it, they can see what I was thinking, they can see, okay, I see how he got here. It's not, it's like if someone's familiar with Flame or whatever, you can kind of see what the process was. The other thing, though, that's really nice about it, that's different from Flame, Flame with like the node based, is that there was never a time when I was a Flame artist where I would have an input and then I would put 10 outputs. And I would say, I'm not sure which one is going to be the right one to go with. The difference with AI, where it becomes more important to have the node base as well, is the different iterations of all these incredible models, because a lot of the prompts might be very nebulously defined. You're saying make it ethereal, light, if you're doing like, I don't know how to interpret that. Over the years, I've gotten those instructions from clients and I'm kind of thinking like, what does that mean? And so now I'm kind of putting AI in the same position. But this is a great way, more so than the traditional. Node-based can be great to begin with for organization, but with AI, it's even that much more important because it can show all the potential in a very organized manner. This is what it looks like here, 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 here. Okay, none of them's wrong. It's all subjective. Wrong in the sense of you might have one that's closer to your vision, but then you can pipe that into the next node, and as you've demonstrated with your tutorials, then have it pipe into 6 different video models. So I would say, lean into something like Weavy, start learning something like that. So for me, if I was to like hire someone, I would want to know, hey, are you up to speed with what you can do with Weavy? And it's one of those things where does not take long to figure it out. Within 5 minutes, the basic structure and you're mm-hmm. ready to go. And then it's just a matter of adding on to it. That's the other thing I love about it is, my kids are using it. It's like, it's incredible. It's like, it's so easy to, it's not like learning Flame, my kids would not have learned the Flame, I work with it every day with Weavy, but I can see that where it's going, and there's so much potential within it to really be a disruptive, in a good way, way for us to kind of move forward. And it's honestly it's the first time in the last few years that I felt really upbeat about our industry, because it requires a specificity to the direction. If you only need Weavy if you really need it to be a specific thing. And so a lot of times it kind of gives me hope for, okay, there are going to be people who are good at figuring out how to articulate something visually. There are going to be people who are going to be good at figuring out what that pipeline would be. There's so many ways now to problem solve for a visual effects or a visual ask. I keep saying visual effects, but any visual, it could be a personal project or whatever.
You put into words the things that motivate us, and I think you understand so well what we're trying to do, and even maybe I can say that you understand it even better than us.
You are not limited in the way that you were 5 years ago. If I wanted to express an idea, I got a leg up because I'm a background in visual effects. If my sister wanted to, she couldn't, but now she can. It's like now, soon it's going to be prompted in, hey Siri, make this cool vignette of Greek mythology. No, make it to the left. It's going to be easier and easier, and that brings up some some fundamental questions too with what's going to unfold from that, because it's not just our peers, it's also our children. Like up until a 4-year-old up until now has been limited to stick figures to express the dream they had last night. Now, as long as they can articulate with words, it can be as vivid as you or me. Again, I think with a lot of these things, it's not an either or, it's an and. It's not like because my kids can have the access to these tools and create beautiful work, I no longer have a career. I mean, there's going to be a desire for humans to express themselves, and it's pretty awesome that they can. There's a lot of great ideas, but maybe people, are not poets, or they're, but now they can really express themselves in a new way. So I think in that sense, it's wonderful. But it doesn't mean that there's not going to still be a need for content, at least in the short term. I mean, I don't know where things are all headed, in the long run. I feel like we are kind of, as a species, like, I don't know where things are going, but
the
anyways,
verge of a big change. Anyway, yeah.
Yes, the quality of things are going to be so much better because you can change. With my personal artwork, I'm limited to the shot of the photo I took of the photos I had access to, etc. But now I can maybe articulate it closer to what I was originally envisioning, and that kind of goes back to on a personal level with my personal artwork. Soulscapes in particular, that was it's a series of 6 short films I've been working on, and I had reached the limits of my 3D capabilities because I was trying to express visually the concept of kind of passing from life into death, that transition, and I wanted it to be like someone reaching out. It's my daughter kind of reaching out, and then like her mother on the other side of the plane kind of reaching back to her, and I wanted it to be like this really cool transition kind of as she goes through, and so I shot photos of her, and at the time I'd done like a I think a 3D scan of her face, so I had like a 3D model. It would have taken a lot of effort for me to create the visuals I had wanted to because it required a lot of 3D. And I know that I could get there eventually by watching a lot of tutorials on YouTube, etc. But I just kind of put the project to the side. And now with AI, I can kind of revisit it, and it's much easier for me to just create one frame, for example, of what I was imagining. And then, and I can still use the footage that I shot of my daughter with her hand and, all that kind of stuff. But now I can take those ideas and continue to build on them in a way that I had previously kind of abandoned. A VFX artist who's not using AI is at a disadvantage, and an AI artist who's not using VFX is also at a disadvantage. And so I think that the combination of them both is going to be good for anyone who comes from our background to know that one, to step into it. It's, I wouldn't hold back. I would, I'd kind of jump into the AI realm and know that a lot of the AI is not at the point where it's just you're one and done. Like, it's still, for the type of work we do, requires a lot of finessing and kind of manipulation still. So
we had a chat. I mean, you, me, and the producer, and he was
yeah.
asking me if I could. How to approach a new project. He had a big client and a big budget and a very short time to do it. And I was thinking for a second, and I said, "Don't do AI. Go super traditional VFX pipeline. I wouldn't do AI because I don't know, maybe I'm scared." But you said, what? I would go AI on that project, and I mean, how is he brave? What's the orientation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, the time I was saying that, I respectfully disagree. I think that you're not, and it's not so much that you go AI, but you integrate AI. And it's because I don't think it's like an all or nothing prospect. But yeah, I do feel like first, I've already used it for the last couple of years in production on really big projects. So in that sense, I do feel confident saying, yes, you can use AI in these things. And I think for me personally, it's that sort of, I don't know if it's cavalier or, where that, I think it's just built on years of kind of not knowing the inability of what, or not quite understanding the limitation of the software and how that has benefited the end result, where I've kind of pushed, After Effects maybe to a direction that Adobe didn't know you could go, like creating like a massive print piece or something like that. And so I think I have a comfortableness in the unknown and kind of being able to MacGyver solutions. And because I see that AI, the way I use it is more integrated throughout the VFX process, where it's not, again, it's not like an all or nothing idea. It's more that when I have a creative task, I tend to break it down to its constituent parts and then kind of evaluate each one. Can I use AI here? Would it help for the backplate? Would it, maybe the rest of it's live action, but I integrate AI just in the background. Or, maybe I've got some AI elements that I'm creating in the comp and continuing to kind of integrate it into the projects. That's how it's, for me, how it's gone over the last couple of years, is trying to recognize where I could introduce it into a traditional kind of pipeline. So when you mentioned that if someone had like a really big budget and they, it was a big project, big client, they were thinking about using AI, I definitely feel strongly that there's no really limitations with that. I think that's the benefit. I think if I was only an AI artist and didn't have a VFX background, I would be a lot more cautious. For each of the AI projects that I've done, by definition, I've never done them before. And in many cases, nobody else has either. So it's kind of like the first thing I do is a proof of concept. And it could be, say, for example, it's a zombie commercial or show or something or project.
Zombie commercial, classic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or something to scare your kids, whatever your intent is. If the end result is zombies, I would feel confident based on what I've seen so far that AI can do. So I feel confident we can do that with AI. And then the first thing I would do is, I'm very transparent. So I'll do a quick test just to kind of confirm, I'm not that like cavalier. I'd want to make sure that, I can do it. And then, so I do that for each of my projects. Essentially, is the very first thing is I do a proof of concept just to make sure that the tools are where they are at. Again, by definition, I haven't really done any of that before, but I've been in a lot of scenarios where I've had to do things where I haven't done them before. Example of that on a professional context would be for Samsung recently. It's actually in the back of Best Buy right now. Samsung has like the 9 different monitors that create one big image. And I was asked to create like a really high resolution visual that would essentially be 20K, right? And because it'd have to be 5 4K monitors. And the parameter was just color, to kind of express color. Where we landed was creating a landscape with flowers. And I recognized early on, like all my projects, I want to say, okay, can this be done in AI? I saw, okay, Magnifique can give me a still of really high resolution. I can get it to 20K, but then the flowers aren't moving. And if it's, on a mountainside, it just looks weird if there's no like little motion. And so a lot of the investigation, I'm not sure if this helps to kind of walk through the problem solving process, but where I ended up was I only used AI for the backplate, of the mountains, because there was nothing that was really moving on them. And, I used the clouds and just did like a slight tilt over the however long it was, 22 seconds. But for the foreground elements, I tried using AI, and I wanted to have butterflies kind of moving around. But at the time, AI, I'm not sure if it was drunk, but the butterflies were just kind of going like this. And I was like, all right, this is not going to work. And so, so what I did was I went to Trader Joe's, I got some flowers, and I went to Walgreens, I got some blue poster board. I went in the backyard and, with my kids, and we just shot a bunch of flowers, just kind of moving gently in the breeze, cut out each element using traditional VFX, and created like a whole landscape of flowers. In the back of the big thing for Samsung, I put a waterfall, and it's the waterfall of my daughter from Rebirth of Gaia. but it's brought to life. And I've got like her hair in the image that I have for the still is just obviously still, but then I just brought it to life, and now she's got like, it's kind of cool that there's like these little things within it that are kind of hidden, Easter egg. But and then like for the butterfly, I just also took some stock footage of butterflies and would place them throughout. Again, I didn't need a 20K image, but it's kind of like, I think this is a good example of taking a project, breaking it down into its core components. I need a butterfly. I need a flower. Okay, I don't necessarily need. I can do the flower individually, right? I can have an individual butterfly, and I could try. In each case, I was trying to do it with AI, but I was hitting limitations. Again, this is maybe like over a year and a half ago or something when I was first working on this. And so things obviously change, and I'm sure that it's figured out butterflies at this point. But at the time, it's an example of what I would encourage other VFX artists to do is try to see where you can integrate AI for each of the elements. But then also just more generally speaking, breaking down complex creative tasks into smaller pieces, and kind of evaluating each one to see what would be the most. I hate to use the word efficient because it suggests like financial, but like the smartest way to kind of get to an element, whether it's a personal project or professional. Just break it down to the smaller pieces, and then build it back up. Like the whole paradigm for a VFX artist or for visual effects, or again, just going back to visuals, it doesn't have to be commercial work, it could be professional work. The whole idea of efficiency is completely upside down. I mean, you can do more in 5 minutes than you could do in 3 months, with it, if you wanted to shoot something on set, whatever, So it gets to the point where it's efficient enough. Like you don't need to go any faster. You need to just kind of take a step back, take a deep breath, and figure out, okay, what's the smartest way? And then also to, like we were talking about earlier, enjoy the times when it's not that it takes longer. Like it can be, there's something nice about just switching gears and not being 100% like just there's times where you might have to do a task that seems a little bit more redundant and seems less efficient, but that there's nothing wrong with that either. I think that you need to kind of, like we were talking about earlier, build in those mental breaks as well, right? You can't just be working at the speed of AI as a human. It becomes draining. So again, it's not so much about efficiency as much as it is. And I know there's a better way to articulate this, but it's not even just like working more smart. It's just, it is working more, smarter, but I guess work smarter, not harder. That kind of concept of.
I love this, but I also feel that the tools are so efficient now that you can take your time and build something smart, build something that has more intention to it. So efficiency is, as you said, it's I love the way you. It's irrelevant. You have way more free time to think about purpose and about meaning and about beauty. I love it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, on a side note, that it really does change, how VFX, going back to like the industry, how, what is a day rate? Like you can get so much done in 10 minutes, like, I thought this technology was decades away up until 2022. I thought that when I first saw something from DALL-E, it kind of put me into the tailspin. Like, what are the implications of this, in many different ways? And, as a career, as a species, like when anybody can generate anything, you don't know what's real, all that kind of stuff. It was just kind of like trying to wrap my head around it. But yeah, I mean, I thought that this was all decades away, with AI, but now that it's here, it's like this stuff is efficient enough. Enjoy it, like if not now, when? Like, right? It's not gonna, like, people who are making this transition can really appreciate the power of AI in a way that the next generation won't be able to. Next generation is going to grow up just being able to say, "Hey Siri, make me a movie that has Tom Cruise, but it's anime. Make it funnier."
On a personal note, I have to say that my 14-year-old daughter is drawing from ever since, but she's drawing really amazing. I mean, I love her drawings, and she is resentful to AI as much as a daughter can resent her father. I mean, like kids sometimes resent their parents. I mean, she doesn't use it for text. She doesn't use it for image. She doesn't use it at all. She's just molding, she's cutting wood and molding
That's awesome.
paper mache. Yeah, and I'm super proud of her. I mean, she's taking a stance against whatever. This is the exact age to do it. So,
well, I think that ultimately the stance is it's the reasons why she's doing it, I think, are good. Perhaps, in the sense that, one, that's what 14-year-olds do. They're gonna
yeah.
rebel. I mean, that's what, as a species, we kind of need that independence. And so but I don't think it's just that. I think maybe that amplifies some of the underlying thoughts that she's having about it. But I mean, there are real concerns about AI and how it's gonna, how it's going to affect things. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's cool to see that she has like that sort of ethics, because that can manifest in different ways over the years too. It means that maybe she's going to be more comfortable with AI in the future at some point, maybe not. But if she is, but she's not going to be comfortable with people like being disadvantaged by this or that. There's like a part of her that's waking up to that is a good intention underlying that.
You're totally right. I recognize the same thing. Yeah. Jesse, it's been a pure pleasure, but I think we have to stop. I have to go and make dinner.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, man. I mean, as always, it's like catching up with an old friend, and it kind of maybe
it's like catching up with a new friend, I feel. Yeah.